Davis Mills and the Houston Texans turned their season around.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. LinkedIn Jobs help you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. I'm Cody. No, that's Cody Davis. I'm John Hickman on this Hump Day episode of the Houston Texans. Cody, we got somebody in, we got somebody out. Chris Conley has been released from the Houston Texans practice squad. Tight end Pharaoh Brown, who was vying for a Pro Bowl spot, All-Pro spot this season, he was also cut from the Houston Texans after he received a $2 million contract over the offseason. That leaves Houston currently with 52 spots filled on the roster. They have one more spot. We're going to look at the players that are eligible to come off of IR this week. Javier Thomas, Christian Harris, Addison, Tegan Quintoriano, the rookie tight end, and Kendall Sheffield. Of those players, only 3 are likely to come off. Allows team to designate only 8 players to come off the injury reserve or non-football injury illness list in a season. And so, Cody, I think right now the important conversation to have is, of those players, of the Javier Thomas, the Christian Harris, the Mario Addison, the Tegan Quintoriano, the Kendall Sheffield, which one of those players may potentially fill Houston's last spot on the 53-man roster?
Well, out of all the guys who are going to come off the IR list this week, the one guy that I'm looking at, and hopefully he is ready, is defensive back Javier Thomas. And I know that name might throw a lot of you guys off, but what I would want to say is this. John, listeners and viewers, going back to Sunday's game, one of the things that I have been talking about is, through the first 4 weeks of the regular season, it seems like every single position group has had a problem with staying consistent, including the cornerback group. Now, look, Darius Stingley Jr., he is going through a learning process right now. He has been up and down since the start of the season. And Steven Nelson, I'm still going to consider him one of, if not the best, offseason acquisition, which, by the way, I think Jerry Hughes might have something to say about that. But you cannot knock how important Steven Nelson has been. However, just like all of the other position groups, the cornerback group has had their share of struggles so far this season. When I take a look at Javier Thomas, once again, you're looking at a guy who was probably, arguably, if not their best defensive back last season. And if you add him to that position group that they already have, the cornerback group is just going to get a lot better, especially considering in the loss against the Los Angeles Chargers, that was a game that Keenan Allen did not play, but yet Mike Williams still went out there and recorded, I think, $120 in receiving yards off of 7 catches.
I got to look at Mario Addison right off the rip, and I'll tell you why. Roy Lopez, Kurt Hinish, Thomas Booker, Michael DeWanfer. All of those players are a part of the Houston Texans rotational right now at the interior defensive tackle spot outside of Malik Collins. Malik Collins is right now the only true veteran of the bunch. Roy Lopez is a sophomore coming into his sophomore year, and he hasn't played extremely well. Booker and Hinish, rookies, and then Michael DeWanfer, sophomores. I look at Mario Addison as a player that, remember, Jacques Cezier coached him in Buffalo. Right now, Houston has been able to get after the quarterback. They have 11 sacks through 4 games, but it just feels like they need more of experienced veteran presence at that position, and I think Mario Addison can help because he can play inside and out. You also got to look at, Lovie Smith talked about there's some guys coming off the injury list that we want to get into rotation as soon as possible. The biggest weakness right now for the Houston Texans is stopping the run, and he's saying as soon as possible. So I got to put 2 and 2 together. Looking at the rotation, I think that is the first player that we have an opportunity to see. And I go back to, again, mentioned as Jacques Cezier, the coach, coached him over in Buffalo. He believes that Addison can be in be a factor, excuse me, immediately. Pure speed, he said last month when describing Addison. I can't wait to have him back. And so you look at the defensive line unit, especially between the DNs, the tackle spots. They have struggled to consistently give the Texans defense pressure up the A and B gap. And so I look at Addison as a player that I think Houston really want to get back on their field. However, I do look at Christian Harris as one of those players that they may just go ahead and get him signed. Bring him back up to the 53-man roster, coming off of IR as a player that they want to get out there. A highly touted draft pick for the Houston Texans. They've spoken highly about him throughout the offseason, throughout rookie, mini camps, OTAs. But overall, just like the D line, that linebacker spot needs some help as well. They need some help with guys that aren't scared to tackle, some guys that are not going to miss tackles, some guys that can be more reliable in coverage. And I think that Harris can possibly fill that void, even if it's just a little bit, to cut down where the Houston Texans are. Right now, they lead the league in missed tackles with over, I think, close to 40 missed tackles, between 35 and 40 around that number. And that's not good through 4 weeks. That's an issue. And so, again, of course, I think it's going to come on the defensive side of the ball. They got one spot left. I think it will be Addison. I wouldn't be shocked if we see Christian Harris get that last spot. I would bet against it, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I would be definitely surprised if Christian Harris get that last spot. And look, I want to see Christian Harris just as much as anybody else. But a couple weeks ago, Lovie Smith was asked about, how is Christian Harris coming along, and he straight up said that, he's coming along fine. However, it's still going to be a while before we can expect Christian Harris to go out there and make an impact for this organization moving forward. Because one, you got to keep in mind that Christian Harris has missed the entire training camp. I believe he missed every single week of training camp except for the first week. Not only that, Lovie Smith and the Houston Texans have a strict policy to where if you miss a certain amount of time, you are going to go through a slow ramp-up period. And I don't see Christian Harris missing nearly all of training camp, missing the preseason, missing the first 4 games of the regular season, then all of a sudden coming in and playing a big or just a small role for the Houston Texans against the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. It's going to take time, John, listeners and viewers, and I would not be surprised if we do not get the Christian Harris that we are hoping to see until next season, because it's going to take him an extremely long time to get to the player that he needs to be as a rookie in order to go out there and get the trust of this organization to go out there and play. That's no knock against Christian Harris. It's just the reality of the situation right now.
Yeah, and that was something that I mentioned a few shows back. I don't. We may not
Yeah.
see Harris play at all this year, but I think he will at some point, especially if he gets healthy. I think this year would be a good year for this Houston Texan team. Speaking of in terms of Harris getting on the field to evaluate that position, any position that you need to truly evaluate, i.e. the quarterback, i.e. the D line, the linebacker group. Make sure you can get those guys out on the field if they're able to play. To go back to Mario Addison and try to correlate the two between Harris and Addison and who should get their spot. To your point, Cody, Harris didn't play any of the preseason. Last time we saw Mario Addison, he played 21 snaps against the 49ers on August 25th. Did not record a tackle. However, he has played in the game more recently than Christian Harris. And overall, I think they need that depth up front to try to help out Jerry Hughes and bring life to some of the other guys like Malik Collins on that front, defensive front. As we're all kind of waiting to figure out how this roster is going to shake up, and as we gear up for this fall weather, that morning weather when it's out 60 degrees and when it's cold outside, who are you holding? But as we all gear up for the fall, you're gonna need the right place and the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easy to find people you want to talk to faster and for free. Create job posts in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond of the world's largest professional network of over 800 million people. Listen, it's kind of easy. Add your job, then the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help find you the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you would like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn jobs the number one in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. Right now, LinkedIn jobs can help you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you guys know that every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? At one point in my life, I was a part of that 40 million job seekers. Every week I was on LinkedIn because I needed a better job and LinkedIn helped me find it. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/locked on NFL. That's linkedin.com/locked on NFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
No, I just, I mean, technically he's not really a sophomore. He's still learning on the job. And you can't teach experience. And so, but we recognize that, there's a reason that he's our starting quarterback, and that goes for every position on the offense. We feel like he can do the job, and so we'll all get better at being more consistent at doing our jobs.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Wednesday installment of Locked On Texans. And what you just heard last week, I had an opportunity to talk to offensive coordinator Pep Hamilton, and I asked him, is the regression that we are seeing out of Davis Mills this season is more so the effects of him hitting a sophomore wall? And for those of you guys who don't know, a lot of young players, rather, it's more common in rookies, but a lot of young players, whether they're rookie season or sophomore season, they go through a mental they have to get over this mental hurdle because they are getting close to the player that they are going to be in a sport league, and at the same time they are still trying to go through the whole entire learning process. And sometimes this wall that a lot of these young players hit, it takes place during the second season. And for Davis Mills, yes, there has been a major regression in his play. However, John, listeners and viewers, Sunday marked Davis Mills' 17th career game, which means he has officially played an entire NFL season. Why is that important? Because as you guys just heard, Pep Hamilton said that he doesn't consider Davis Mills to be a second year player as of right now. So if Sunday marks the start of Davis Mills' official sophomore campaign, is there a hope for Davis Mills in his career? Now, John, before getting the floor over to you, this came to my attention because a lot of great quarterbacks actually struggled during their rookie season. Some of them, their struggle lasted all the way up until their second or third year. When you take a look at great quarterbacks like Drew Brees, he struggled up until, I believe, his fourth season when he signed with the New Orleans Saints. Peyton Manning had one of the worst rookie campaigns in NFL history, and he turned out to be one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. No, I'm not comparing Davis Mills to Drew
I'm
Brees
glad you said that because you
or
know they was
Peyton
gonna bring it
Manning.
up.
No. I'm not comparing it, but I just wanted to give an idea on how bad a rookie wall slash sophomore wall can be. However, the latest quarterback that came to my mind is Josh Allen. As of right now, Josh Allen is, of course, in the running for league MVP honors. And Josh Allen really did not become Josh Allen until his third season. Through his first 2 years in the NFL, this is a man who had only completed 56.3% of his passes. He did have an opportunity to throw 30 touchdowns, but at the same time, he also threw 21 interceptions. And now, over the last 2 years, Josh Allen has went from a player who was arguably one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the league to what is he? Some people put him in as a top 5 quarterback as of right now. With all that being said, y'all listeners and viewers, do you think there's hope for Davis Mills that he can turn his career around? Because like I've been preaching this whole entire offseason, a better version of Davis Mills means a better offense. A better offense means a better version of the Houston Texans.
You know, last season was the first 17 game regular season. And this notion of he's not technically a sophomore yet, it hasn't happened enough for Sunday to be the deciding factor game that he's a sophomore now. Like, I hate that. I really, this is year two for you. You had a full offseason as a starter. If you didn't play 16, 17 games all of last year, being the full-time starter and in offseason and being the full-time starter throughout this entire process should at the very least speed that up to determine whether or not you're a freshman or a sophomore, a rookie or a sophomore. I hate that. And that's just not necessarily for Pep Hamilton. But whenever people say that he's not a whatever this classification, how long has he been in the NFL? 2 goddamn years. And to answer your question, whether or not Davis Mills can turn it around, listen, it's possible. There is a chance. I think for Davis Mills to actually turn it around, first and foremost, Houston has to not be sold on these quarterbacks coming out. And I wanted to mention that, they were listed as the scouts that was at the Kentucky game. And as we know, Kentucky has one of the highly touted quarterbacks coming out in this year's draft. At this time, his name escapes me. I think it's Levis or Levi's. I can't remember it exactly, so forgive me. But not to mention, they could have been there to watch like one of the middle linebacker, Johnson, who was having a hell of a game because they need a linebacker here, and everybody's just like quarterback, quarterback, quarterback. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. I'm not saying the Houston Texans should not address it next year, but for Davis Mills to really get an opportunity to turn it around, they have to right now really believe that there's not a quarterback out there coming out of college that they really want to invest in that first couple of picks they're gonna have next year. Because if that's the case, based off the first 4 games, then Davis Mills won't have a real opportunity to turn his career around. But in this season, he got to do himself a favor. Before you can worry about the career, he got to worry about the season, and there is an opportunity. The first thing Davis Mills has to do, I think, is to go out on Sunday and beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. And he has to have a good game. That 9-minute span where he was able to go out there and help that offense put up 17 points, going out there, finding open guys, allowing plays to develop, not being so quick to check down because you're having happy feet at this moment and you're nervous. He can't do that on Sunday. This is an opportunity for you as Davis Mills to turn it around and beat the Jaguars. It's very possible. I like the Jaguars. I like the future of the Jaguars. And I'm one of those guys that like players for who they was coming out of college. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. Trevor Lawrence is one of those guys I like coming out of college. Doug Peterson is a coach that I've liked since the Super Bowl run and what he was able to do in Philly. They got some players on the defensive side of the ball that can play some damn good football. But it's still possible for them to lose. It's still possible for the Houston Texans, who, by the way, through the first 4 games of this year, how many times were they blew out by the ending score?
Many.
Not no real ending score blowout, right? Through the first 4 games of last year, how many blowouts was it?
Just one, actually.
The Bills, not the Bills. The Panthers.
The Bills was a blowout.
The Bills was a blowout. The Panthers, I think, was a blowout as well. Was the Panthers a blowout last year?
No, I don't remember.
But I think overall, this team, they have not been just outmatched. They've been very competitive in majority of these games. If you want to say all 4, I understand. But at the very least, 3 out of the 4 games they've been very competitive in. 2 of those games they had the lead in, right? So this team, I think, has shown the will to fight, even with their inefficiencies. But the biggest inefficiency of all has been Davis Mills this season so far. And I think that at the very least, Davis, you've already shown this year alone off 1 game, off 2 drives, you've shown that you are capable of playing respectable quarterback play. You got to do that on Sunday. And that's for Davis Mills to turn it around. And I also will say this: if Davis Mills turns it around, I think the Houston Texans can turn it around. I think that if Davis Mills is able to turn it around, because one of the Texans' worst issues, 3 and outs, right? When you go 3 and out at the rate that they've been going 3 and out, you know what they put pressure on? Who they put pressures on? Your defense. We got to go back out there again? Okay. And it's happening frequently, right? 3 and out, defense back on the field. I think that's why we're not seeing the defense play as good as maybe we would want them to see to play, because they've been out there on the field a good amount of times. Davis, help your team out. It's plain and simple, right? Go out there and hit Nico with anticipation throws. Don't wait for everything to be so perfect. Anticipate the throw. Follow through with the throw. Hit him in stride. Don't hit the wide receiver this way. Hit him right here in the chest so he can continue to flow. We've seen it a couple of times with Davis Mills so far. Stop treating Brandon Cooks like he's 7'6". He ain't Yao Ming out there. He is 5'10" with cleats on. He's 5'11". Right? Make it easier for your playmakers to have an opportunity to make plays. Get that offense in flow. There's two things that I've realized out of Davis Mills. Number one, of course, I've already said it, that he has had an issue with not allowing plays to develop. And I think that plays into why he's not getting into rhythm. On Sunday, we had an opportunity to see Davis Mills play with rhythm for the first time this entire season during a 9-minute stretch. I think to perfection. Davis, do that consistently, then yeah, we'll talk about your career. But right now, you got to turn the season around, and it's very possible if they beat the Jacksonville Jaguars.
And the one thing I do want to mention about Davis Mills as of right now, I truly do believe that he is going through a sophomore wall as of right now, John, because look, the regression that he has been on, it's been kind of scary. I mean, last year, this is a young man, a rookie, by the way, who completed 66.8% of his passes. This year, in the first 4 games alone, the man has only completed 62% of his passes. And if it wasn't due to the fact that he had an opportunity to complete 70-something% of his passes in the loss against the Los Angeles Chargers on Sunday, we could have been looking at a situation of Davis Mills completing less than 60% of his passes. And once again, this is why I wanted to point out Josh Allen, because Josh Allen was terrible through his first 2 seasons in the league. And once he got into that 3rd year, he really took off. However, Josh Allen also had the trust and the faith from his franchise.
Are you questioning that for Davis Mills and the Houston Texans from up top, not the fans, from where it actually matters, from Nick Caserio down to Lovie Smith, down to Pep Hamilton, down to George Warhop, down to Nico? Are you saying that? Not the fans, but the building.
And that is where I was about to go with that. And I'm glad that you asked me that question, because, John, I go back to the day that they traded Deshaun Watson away. Ever since that day, Nick Caserio, Lovie Smith, Pep Hamilton, everybody always said Davis Mills is our starting quarterback for this season. Davis Mills has an opportunity to go out there and showcase what he can do for this season. They never said he's our starting quarterback moving forward. They never said Davis is the guy that we're going to stick by, through thick and thin, or whatever the case might be. They always said for this season, which now you also got to take into consideration the regression that we are seeing out of Davis Mills. Is it more so him feeling the pressure that if I don't go out there and perform, I would not have a starting job next season?
It could be, but let's not use that for an excuse.
I'm not using it for an excuse. I'm not using it for an excuse.
And not necessarily saying you, but I don't think that is a good excuse. The Texans have done just about everything outside of giving him multiple weapons and investing into an offense. Like, even if it was Davis Mills, if it was Tyrod Taylor, no matter who it is, they did not invest in this offense properly. But they've given him every opportunity. You're the starter. We want you.
Yeah, but once again, just for this season, when you go back and you take a look at how the Buffalo Bills was talking about Josh Allen, it wasn't just for this season or just for this.
It was a first-round pick. Davis Mills is not a first-round pick. That's but once again, stop losing our minds over. Like, Davis is not a first-round pick. He is a third-round pick. There's not many later-round picks, quarterbacks that get multiple opportunities. So when you do get this opportunity, Davis, when the franchise is falling apart, when Deshaun Watson has been traded, when all of this is going on, that shouldn't be an excuse. You have a year to prove you can play football for a team at quarterback, because if you do, then they're able to go out and invest in other areas. But if you don't, off your own merit and off your own, with your own play, then that's on him. And so far, it's been on Davis. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting information this season. Find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite games, events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. So head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more because BetOnline is where the game starts. Thanks for making Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Be sure to check out the crossover show with the Locked On Jags and my boy Wig. Now make your second listen the Locked On, the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Really quick, I was talking about Jaquez Jones, the middle linebacker for for the Kentucky
Kentucky.
Wildcats. Yeah, he's been highly touted as one of the better linebackers in the country. We talked about whether or not Davis Mills can turn it around. Can the Texans turn it around? Like, what's the ceiling right now for the amount of wins that they could possibly have when the season is over with?
John, I'm looking at the schedule right now. I'm counting at least three. As of right now, I don't see them winning no more than three. I think they could possibly get the Jags one of these times. I still believe there's hope that they can also beat the Commanders and maybe the New York Giants as of right now. Like it's truly hard, and the reason why it's so hard. And then look, come to think of it, the Giants aren't they like 3-1 right now or something like that?
Giants is a good team right now.
So
I wouldn't give them the Giants. They are breaking down with injury, but they are a very good
yeah,
team.
and that's what I'm thinking. The injury factor there, and Saquon Barkley is tearing it up right now. But I mean, knock on wood, hopefully he doesn't get hurt. But John,
I hope Saquon finishes this season out. I really do.
but I'm looking at the schedule, of course, starting with Jacksonville on Sunday, and it's very hard for me to see them. And I think 3 wins is pushing it because first and foremost, a lot of the wins that I originally had the Houston Texans winning, a lot of these teams are a hell of a lot better than what I expected. The Philadelphia Eagles, my God. The New York Giants, my God. And so, those are 2 wins that's already gone. And then I go back and I take a look at what has already transpired through the first 4 weeks of the regular season. You have a lead against Indianapolis, you blow that lead, and I do believe that that also set the tone for this entire season. The Denver Broncos and the Chicago Bears both did everything possible to say, here go a victory, and you still did not take control of the opportunity. Then with the Los Angeles Chargers, yes, you did come back from being down 24-0, but at the same time, I always felt that a comeback in that game was not going to happen. And then you also got to take into consideration that not one, not two, not three, but 4 times on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage, the Houston Texans were playing teams where arguably, if not their best, their second, no lower than their third best player was out due to injury. So as of right now, man, it's tough. I got them. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I can see 3 wins. I got them winning one of the Jaguars games. I think they can beat the Raiders as this Raider team is currently operating.
Nah, I don't see it.
I think they beat the Commanders. I'm gonna go ahead and say 4 because the Houston Texans always play the Tennessee Titans very hard. They always give them fits. Just like last year, they gave them problems, right? And we all thought that, and it was, but the Tennessee Titans was, 1,000 times much better of a team. So I can possibly see 4 wins out of this. I think if the Houston Texans get 4 wins, considering what this season would be, kind of based off of in terms of evaluations, I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, they should have more than 4 wins. They should have 4 wins right now. At the very least 3 wins, right? And so, again, if they are able to turn it around to get 4 wins without, because I don't see this team having maybe Jalen Petrie as of right now. I don't see this team having any players that are going to get NFL accolades. You got to take that with.
I don't know. Damian Pierce.
Damian Pierce
might.
Damian Pierce. He may get offensive rookie of the year. He may get a Pro Bowl nod. Jalen Petrie may get some love on them rookie of the year type of deals. But But I don't see this team turning it around to make the playoffs. I never thought they was going to make the playoffs in the first place. So I think right now you have to evaluate this team based off of the future, what you want out of the future, and that is, hey, you want a good run game. Evaluate Damian Pierce. You want a playmaker at safety and cornerback. Make sure you evaluate those two rookies and Kenyon Green at right guard as well. That's what you got to do moving forward, is just evaluate, and hopefully things get better.
You're not gonna give them December 4th?
Thank you guys for checking out today's episode of the Locked On Texas podcast. Be sure to check us out Monday through Friday on Locked On under the name Locked. You know, they may win that game, by the way. Like,
I'm about to say, because I think Cleveland's gonna have a quarterback who hasn't played in like what, pushing 2 years at that moment. So I don't know.
I'm leaning towards he's not going to play that game.
I don't know. He has to. He has to. It's part of his punishment, I believe.
You better come back away from them towels and play the Texans. But make sure you follow us on Twitter as well at Locked On Texans.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, peace.